Hi guys, it's Kelly Latevola here and I'm back with another video for Neat and Tangled. Today we are using one of the stamp sets from the January release, and this is called Piece of Cake. I had a ton of fun coloring this, and in fact have two different ways to color it for you. It's a very large stamp, so it takes up, basically it's your whole focal point. So this is one of those ones that like super easy to stamp out a couple and take it with you on the go, which is what I did when I colored the white one that you will see. So we're going to talk about coloring frosting today. And for the chocolate on chocolate cake, I'm going to show you the whole card, which is why this thing is like 30 minutes long. But for the white one, I'm just going to show you how I did the frosting, how to get the three-dimensional white frosting. So I chose, you can do, with white, you're coloring the shadows. Okay, we've had this conversation before if you've watched my videos. So you can do any kind of grays you want. I chose warm grays. Just because I felt like that made more sense for this, for like food items. I typically tend to go with warmer grays. So I'm just putting down where the shadows are going to be in order to get the dimension on the frosting where it's like dripping, or the icing where it's dripping. You can see I'm just making little like half moon marks that are in the shape of the drips. So then from there, I'm adding some shading underneath the drips along the side of the cake, and then in the the pieces section where it's pieced out, I'm going to add a little bit of shading underneath each kind of section, as well as from the right hand side. I know that's kind of a lot to take in, but the way that I color, I start with my lightest color and work out to my darkest. So you're going to see this a couple of more times, and hopefully it'll make more sense as we go through it. Plus, then you'll see it again when we do the chocolate one and how that's a little bit different when you're not leaving a white area. For like the little frosting, like the little star shapes or dollops that they have at the top, I'm doing the same thing. I'm using a very light hand, just the tip of the marker, because I do want to leave some white highlight areas. And then I'm adding shading coming out from that, almost at an angle, because that's how the cake is cut. And then the same thing with those half moon shapes, just want to follow the shape of the drips and adding shading underneath those. Now I'm adding darker shading where the drips kind of come up, because those would be darker where it's coming down, like just up in those little like alcove areas. And then just going over the same thing that I was before. I'm not completely covering up the lightest color. I'm keeping it pretty minimal shading because again, we're just adding the shadows. So for the darkest part, I do want to add the darkest color because it will give it that contrast that's going to give it the dimension, but I'm not going to add a ton of it because the frosting's supposed to be white. So this particular color is just very, very minimal. I think a lot of times when people think that like, oh, she's coloring with 4 colors. I am coloring with 4 colors, but I'm not adding the same amount of every color, and you don't have to. You can add just a little bit of dark here and there, and it will still be enough to give you some dimension without just completely covering your project in it. So once I had the darker one down, I'm going to go back. Oh, the candle part is already drawn so that it's like sinking into the frosting. I'm just accenting that by extending the lines. And then just going over anywhere I put that C5 over with the C3, and then again blending out with, see, now I said C's because I'm used to C's. You know what I'm saying? Old habits die hard. Anywhere I put the W5, I'm going over it with the W3, and then again with the W1. And then that part, the frosting part, is actually done. And you can see how dimensional it looks. It looks a little bit dirty. I'm going to be honest, looks a little bit dirty because there's no other colors on it, but you'll see once we get to the end and you see the finished piece, how that does really look white once you add in the other colors. So I wanted to show you it again with the chocolate in case, basically guys, I just picked the 2 that are most common, but you could color it any color frosting you want. What did we do the one year? Last year, he wanted Spider-Man. My peanut wanted Spider-Man. And so the icing that I had was red and blue because that matched the theme of our party. you know, the one year we did Wally Kazam, and I think I did orange and blue frosting. So like you can really make it whatever you want following these same steps. But I wanted to show you the white because it is different than using a color, but the chocolate one will apply to any other color that you have just because we're going to fill in more of it. So we're still doing those same half moon shapes on the parts that it's dripping, but I'm also going to add a highlight like on the back of the cake. And you can see I left myself a very generous rectangle. It will not end up being that big in the end, but because I'm heavy-handed and I know that about myself, I like to give myself a lot of extra room. For this portion of it, I'm, doing the same thing, adding the shading underneath it. I'm going to put the shading all in the same areas that I was before. It's just going to be a little bit more because ultimately this entire cake will be filled in versus the other one where we're leaving the white air, those white open areas. I hope that makes sense. So adding the shading along, the sides of where the actual pieces of cake are going to be. And right now, as you go through it, it's going to look weird. It's going to look flat. It's going to look all of those things. But that's why you keep going. In art, most times it looks worse before it looks better. So you have to push through that worst part to get to the better. That's just kind of how it works. You have to force yourself to do it, which is why I always tell you guys, don't start over. Don't throw it away. Don't throw it away. If anything, treat it as a learning experience. It is merely cardstock. And I guess I'm not trying to minimize how frustrating it can be when you're coloring and it doesn't turn out the way that you want, because I have been there. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we can all try again. That's why stamps are an investment, because you just stamp another one and then try it again. Or stamp another one and try it a different way. So yeah, that's that. We're also going to talk a little bit about creating the cake texture versus just coloring in with flat color, which is fine. Okay, let me just reiterate that. There's nothing wrong with coloring this stamp set. It is totally adorable. It's super cute on its own. And then just going in here with one layer color and filling in these images. I also have no idea why I started losing my voice, and my apologies. Moving on. So there isn't anything wrong with that. Like if you have a stamp set that you love, that is super cute, that you can just go in and just do one layer color, it's still going to be cute, guys. It really is. I just wanted to show you, if you want to attempt something like this, if you want to attempt something like coloring shiny cake frosting, if you want to attempt a different texture than just a smooth cake, by no means does your project need to look this way. By no means do you have to combine the two like I did here. You could definitely do less shiny frosting and the cake texture, or vice versa, a smoother cake texture and, shiny frosting. There's a bunch of combinations. I'm just trying to show you how I do it if I want shiny frosting. That's bottom line. And I hope that you'll learn something from it. Now, if you find that and this happens to me too, guys, honestly, don't sweat it. If you find that you haven't left yourself a large enough area of white to leave that highlight, to give it that dimension, don't sweat it. There's a way to fix everything. And in those cases, I would just go back in with a white gel pen because they're opaque. And then I would just fill in those areas white that I needed to be white. No harm, no foul. But it is a skill to have, to be able to leave them in there. So I would encourage you to practice that. But the sections in the middle, I could have left them white. I could have left the highlight there, but I'm actually going to color them in so you can see what it looks like when you go back in with the gel pen. So I did that on purpose so you could see that there really isn't any huge, massive difference. So yeah, what has been going on in life? It's been a long time since I posted a video. I didn't mean for it to be. I had intentions of putting up a more recent video and then, life. So we had Snowmageddon over here in Cleveland. It snowed, just straight blizzard, for almost 3 days. I had 4 feet of snow in my backyard up against my front door. Thankfully, I had the day off of work that day, like the day that the majority of it came down, because it started at 10 a.m. on, was it Friday? Nope. 10 a.m. on Saturday, and then pretty much snowed continuously until probably about noon on Sunday. Then it took a short break. Then it came back again Sunday night. So there was like this blizzard that was coming up from the south, which is where like we got just dumped on. Then the one that came in Sunday was actually lake effect snow, which I didn't know this until, I don't know, probably like a year or two ago. Apparently, lake effect snow is a pretty rare phenomenon. I've lived in Cleveland my whole life, so for me, it's pretty typical. Like lake effect snow is the thing that we have, which is, warm air mass comes across the lake, creates this lake effect snow because it mixes with the cooler air or something like that. I'm certainly not a meteorologist, but if I was, I could be wrong about my job and still have one. But anywho, but I guess it's relatively rare. There's only like a handful of places, or like half a dozen places that happens in the world, and one of them just happens to be here because we're right off of Lake Erie. So a lake effect storm came in on Sunday, and then that carried into Monday. And so yeah, it was just snow everywhere. Then Mother Nature got drunk, I think is what happened, because it was January, so snow makes sense, right? So then she must have, I don't know, went to some sort of frat party or something on a Tuesday night, because then Wednesday the temperatures went up to, today's high was 47 degrees. 47 degrees in January in Cleveland. That is wild. So now everything's melting, right? Everything is just, all of the snow is melting. Everything is sloppy mess. And it's just been going on all day. There's standing water. There's roads closed due to flooding. All of those things. Then this evening after midnight, another cold front is supposed to come in. So everything that is a sloppy mess now is then going to refreeze and be snowed upon again. So my commute in the morning ought to be aces, let me tell you. So cake texture. Here I'm using stippling, and you guys have seen me use this before, but I'm using it here to create texture in this cake, because when you cut a cake, part of what makes it, fluffy and moist and all of those things is the air pockets that you incorporate into the cake when you're mixing it. And then when it bakes, those air pockets rise, and that's what makes your cake all fluffy and nice. But when you cut into it, you can see some of those, and they're, typically smaller. So that's what I'm basically trying to recreate here. And I'm going to speed it up here in a minute, because this is a little bit time consuming, because I go over it twice. I find that just gives me a better blend, and it doesn't look quite so crazy. If you were doing something like carrot cake or banana bread or something like that, or banana cake, I made that 2 weeks ago and it was delicious with cream cheese frosting. It was very yummy. But then I could see leaving it with just the one coat where the dots are very apparent. But I like it to be a little bit smoother when it comes to the cake portion of it. So I am going to go all the way back out to the lightest color. And really that like last layer of the lightest color is what makes all the difference, because it kind of smushes all the colors together. So you still see the texture, but it's just not as in your face about it. So yeah, it's just a fun way to just add a little bit of something extra to it. But again, like I told you, by all means, not necessary, not something you need to do. I colored both of the cards the same exact way. I kept their outfits the same, minus my little girl in the bottom left-hand corner. In the white one, she has a pink shirt. In the brown one, she has a red shirt, because I colored the white one rainbow. And I did it the same way you just saw me do the chocolate one. I just alternated colors. And I had done that actually sitting in my living room. Why is this important? Why is this something to discuss? I've been card making for a little bit now. And, well, what has it been? It's been over 10 years, if you can even believe that. Let me just age myself. So, no, it hasn't been over 10. It's been almost 10. Whew, that makes me feel better. But I didn't do videos the whole time. I only started doing videos about, 4 years now, 4 years ago. So before, I could craft wherever I wanted. Like, I could sit in my family room and craft, or I could take it with me if I was traveling. I could take it to work with me when I was dispatching. If we were, having a slow night, I could do it there. But then I started doing the videos, and I love doing the videos. This is not at all a complaint about the videos. When I started doing the videos, I had to be in front of the camera. And so it limited my ability to just color what I wanted to color. So now that I have kind of pared down the amount of companies that I'm working for, not that I'm still very busy, and I'm very grateful for that, but I have signed up for less things that require videos. So basically I can make videos when I want to make videos. You know what I'm saying? That means I can go back to just kind of hanging out and coloring, which I have been doing quite a bit lately, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying being able to just color for the sake of coloring, and not because I have a deadline. You know what I'm saying? So anywho, while Snowmageddon was going on, which if you follow me on Instagram, you got like hourly updates as the Snowmageddon was happening, just because I thought it was fascinating to see how like the snow was piling up and the drifts were huge, and like they were up to the wheel wells of the truck in the driveway. It was crazy. But while Snowmageddon was going on, I was binge watching This Is Us, because I didn't watch it when it first came out. When I had Peanut TV was one of the things that went, and so I'm like catching up on all the things that everybody else has been watching. Not that I really super miss TV, I don't. I would rather read, but it's nice to be able to just like sit in front of the TV and kind of get invested in these characters a little bit, and then color, which is really what I want to do. I have also picked up cross-stitching again. So I taught myself to cross-stitch when I was like 15, and I haven't done it in forever, so that was something that I kind of wanted to get back into, because I used to do it while I watched TV. I've always been one of those people who could never just do one thing at a time. You can probably tell from my typical rate of speech, I'm kind of like go, go, go. So it's very difficult for me to just sit and do one thing, which drove my mother nuts when I was a child, because I would eat dinner standing up in the restaurant. I just could not sit still. And, but it's a skill set that God gave me that, makes me a pretty decent dispatcher, because multitasking is required. So, they're all attributes, even when you think they're not. And so sometimes when I get frustrated because Peanut's kind of like go, 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 I try to remember that I also am that way. I just don't require anybody to entertain me anymore. So as far as their little outfits, like I said, I colored them all the same, except for this girl I'm working on right here. Her shirt and the other one is pink. But I will show you all of the colors. Don't you worry. And then, like always, they'll be linked, so you could see what that looks like. And I will link both of them for both cards, not just one or the other. And then, I enjoy challenging myself, whether that be with, different types of techniques or learning new things. I was on the way home from work the other day, thinking about like maybe I would like to take a drawing class. I just always want to be learning things, which is probably why I like teaching so much, because I value when people teach me things. But so one of the things that I wanted to do with this card was kind of practice my skin tones again, since there's 4 kids here, and my little Peanut, now that he's in kindergarten, is getting some invites to some birthday parties. The next one that is up on the schedule is a roller skating party. So that one will be interesting, but I just figured that way it gives me a chance to practice my skin tones, and then no matter who he has a birthday party for, everybody's kind of represented, which I really love. This part, I'm just showing you the 2 colors that I used, because I'm coloring the candle the same way that I have been, so there was no need to really show you that. Here we're going to start getting into their hair, and it's going to seem a little bit crazy, but it's a trust exercise. It's a trust me moment. So for their little pom-poms, I did do them, I wanted them to be white, you know, it's a rainbow party, but I didn't want to have to pick different colors for each pom-pom, so I just opted to go white. And pretty much with those, I just extended the lines that are already there with some grays. Then, oh, the fork, right, I have to color the fork. So I opted to make the fork silver, and I will tell you that I did have a little bit of brown bleeding onto my fork. It wasn't something that I thought about at the time I was coloring it, because I didn't have that problem with the first one, but the first one was white. So there wasn't any color to bleed into the fork. This one, the brown I did kind of pick it up with my lighter color markers, but I'm just going to say she decided to dig into the cake a little bit early and not stress over it because it's not that big of a deal. I did leave a little bit of a highlight on the fork so that it would be a little bit more realistic. So I left the highlight on the handle and then kind of in the center-ish portion of the fork. And then again, now here we are with the hair. This is what I was trying to tell you, that it's a trust me thing, because I am adding blue into this young man's hair. Well, I'm not opposed to blue hair. I mean, inherently, there's some people who look super cute with blue hair. My friend Jen has blonde hair and she's got teal underneath and she looks like a mermaid, which is totally fitting for her. But that's not how I'm doing it here. Most hair colors have an undertone to them, whether that be a blue-black or a purple-black or a red undertone. That's why you have blondes, strawberry blonde, because it has more of a reddish tint to it. So there's all different kinds. But typically with black, you're going to have some sort of undertone. Also with black, now here I'm doing hers purple versus the blue. And these are usually my two go-tos, honestly, either purple or black, or purple or blue when I'm doing black hair. But the more white you leave in their hair, the more shiny it will appear. So for the little boy on the right, I'm going to color him with a more Asian skin tone. And pretty much everybody that I know that is of Asian descent has the most beautiful, shiny black hair. Like, so, I know you're not supposed to covet things that other people have. And theirs probably wouldn't hold a curl where mine will. But I mean, to just look at somebody who has like just this long, beautiful, shiny black hair, I'm totally envious. Now, on this little girl on the right-hand side, she has the little pigtails, and I wanted them to be curly, so more like a little African-American girl. But I didn't want to get totally crazy with it. So I did stippling in the pigtails so that they would appear to be curly. So the straight part, like the smooth part where her bangs are, I did do the purple. And then I just dotted it in along with the other darker grays. And I did leave a little bit of a highlight on hers as well, because if you see, again, this comes back to, you know, how people style their hair. If you see a young woman who has black hair and she has, you know, straightened it out or smoothed it out, also, again, very shiny and beautiful. So I wanted that to also be reflected in there. For the other two, this little girl is going to be blonde, little blonde-headed girl. And then the one on the right-hand side is going to be like a medium brownish. And then all of their skin tones will be different as well, though the technique for coloring them will still be the same. So what were we talking about? Oh, so I picked up cross-stitching again. The ADD thing is what I was going to say. So like my kid won't sit still. I never could sit still. And I think probably if we were in today's era of like diagnoses from school, which seems like there's just more and more every day, they probably would have told me that I had ADD, but it hasn't ever been anything that, I don't know, held me back, or any, like, I guess I'm just always on the go and I constantly need to be doing things. But that's fine with me because I have 800 hobbies, so it's not like a big deal. Now, on the flip side, is it difficult for me to sit down and like watch a movie? Sure, sometimes it is. But then I just cross stitch, or I color, or I do, you know, whatever other hobby I might have while I'm doing that, and then it's fine. My brain just works at a faster pace than other people's, I guess. But anyway, so the whole moral of this crazy long story is I'm getting a little bit more time to color just for the sake of coloring, and that's making me happy. Speaking of, remember how we talked about the bleeding onto the fork? This little boy, normally I do my skin tones first and then I do the hair, but I was so caught up in doing their outfits because I had those colors out for the other things, that I just went ahead and did their hair. And then here, because his skin tone is so pale, with the lightest color, I smeared some of the black onto his face. Like, that's unfortunate. But at this point, I'm so invested in this card, you know that I'm not doing it again. It's just not going to happen. So I just went over it a few more times with the lightest color, and then that seemed to work out for me. It picked up a lot of the color. It's not noticeable in the end card. I did go back in and add just a little bit darker shading underneath like the area that's hanging over his face than maybe I would have otherwise, but it certainly isn't anything that's noticeable or anything that takes away from the card, so I'm not even sweating it. Yeah, so these are just like super fun to color, and I think they're so cute. And the little, you know, like I said, he has the birthday party that's coming up. He told me the other day that he wants to do a it's like a trampoline park, basically, is the gist of it, which is also what his cousin did. So he's pretty sure that that's what he wants to do for his birthday, which I gotta be honest, makes me a little bit nervous because I feel like kids probably get injured in those a lot just because there's just free falling through the air. But we will see how it goes because he does seem to really enjoy it. So that might be something that's a little bit fun. And considering that I moved and my house is a little bit smaller than my married house was, trying to have any sort of party here would probably be very difficult. I have very generous parents, so I could probably use their house if need be. But I really don't want to take over their home for a whole Saturday. That just seems like a crazy amount of work for them. So we are nearing the end of the video, and I am not going to put it... I'm not going to put it on the Neat and Tangled channel. Normally, the video is the same no matter where you go. The reason I'm not going to put it on the Neat and Tangled channel is because it is a little bit more personal, and maybe you're not interested in hearing it, but Peanut recorded his own video unbeknownst to me, and I found this gem while I was in the middle of editing this video, and I wanted to include it. So if you are watching on my channel, at the very end there will be a cameo by Peanut. It is a couple of minutes long, I will warn you. So if you're not interested in that, that's okay. At the end of the video, just peace out. And then if you want to see like the still photos or whatever and get a better look, either hit the pause button, or you can head over to the blog, the Neat and Tangled blog, to check those out. Stamping the sentiment, this is super fun because I'm just going to line it up like right in the open cake pieces. Now you certainly don't have to do this. They fit perfectly if you want to, but you certainly do not have to do this. You could put them underneath it, or, you know, heat emboss them and pop them up over top of it. There's a bunch of different options, but you know I love me some one layer cards. So I'm just stamping it in black right over top. On the video, it is a little bit more difficult to see, but I promise you in real life, they're totally legible. I don't know if it's just because the camera's so far away, but in real life, you can read them. It says another birthday piece of cake, which I think is adorable. So for this one, the only thing that I did change about it is the cake was a little bit hard to read with all of the texture in the background. So I'm just going to take my black Copic marker and just fill that in. So it's a little bit more weighty and a little bit more legible. Now, obviously, you could certainly fill this in with any other color you wanted, but since I was stamping my sentiment in black and I have all this other rainbow color going on, I just felt like that made the most sense. So you saw me outline all of everything and then, you know, go back in with the white gel pen. I felt like the cake and the little kids were kind of like floating a little bit. So I'm just going to put some ground in, just very minimally, nothing that's any kind of big deal, just to, you know, give them something to sit on, and it makes a world of difference. Here are the two different cards, and then that's it. That's the whole thing. So thank you guys so much for joining me, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.